And hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Pumpkin Coptercast, a good old podcast about video games. Today, I am joined by a team that made a recent appearance, whose game made a recent appearance at the just happened Boston Fig Fest. I'm joined by Ken and Josh of Dirty Beast Games.
Yo.
Yeah, how's it going?
Yeah, we'll start with the standard, who you are and what you do in terms of, working at the company.
Cool. I'm Ken. I do the programming and the sound for the most part, and then just bits and pieces. We're a two-man team, so a little bit of everything.
Yeah, and I'm Josh, and yeah, I kind of compliment him. It's just the two of us, so a lot of crossover and wearing multiple hats. But yeah, I'm more of the visual end of it, the artist and such. Mm-hmm. But that's generally the dichotomy of it.
Okay, so we'll just get right into it right now. So, if we were at Boston Fig or PAX or some other video game convention and someone was walking by your booth and asking what Feral Frontier was, what's the type of rundown you would give them?
I guess it would be a classic 2D side-scrolling platformer at a base level.
Action. I would say an action adventure platformer probably, because we want to stress that it's not just jumping. There's and there's all kinds of fighting and puzzle solving is in store, and I'd say
minimal RPG elements.
Yeah, minimal RPG elements. Nothing really too invested that would make this, I don't know, put on the scale of being able to put next to, say, a Skyrim or even like a JRPG or anything. It doesn't really go that far or like even like Diablo or whatever. It doesn't go that deep into that. But we wanted a little bit of character customization, so we're working on that. So,
yeah, that's still in the works now.
Yeah,
that doesn't even exist.
So a lot of people use the genre name Metroidvania, and it's really big. And I guess you could say there's elements of that where we want exploration. We kind of want like a nonlinear progression. So those elements are there, but we're not like super sold on the genre label of what we are, because we're really just trying to make the best possible game we can. And in this case, it's a 2D adventure, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you just mentioned a bit of character customization. So on to the question of who is the main character. Is it going to be like a set character with like a specific story and place in the game's world, or is it just going to be like a character that you just design and is just there to move things along?
Well, the first one. So it's a pre-named, pre-created, like uncustomizable in like who the character model is. Mm-hmm. But there'll be decisions of varying importance in the game, and there'll be character customization as far as like optimizing the way your character plays, so that it's the gameplay itself that is customized in the. Since there's just one character, and at this point in the development, just a one-player game, it's not like you're picking different classes or you're doing the kind of Bethesda games kind of character modeling. None of that. It's nothing like that.
You're like Mega Man or Link.
Yeah. And the story is definitely very much written for this character, around this character, in this world, and the decisions you make are what order of operations do you want to take, and maybe you can omit some things and not other things, and make certain alliances, not other alliances, smaller decisions, nothing that turns like this game into a bunch of branching story outcomes or anything like that. But yeah, so the customization is really more like how much damage are you going to do versus how much stamina are you going to have, or do you want to have this ability equipped that gives you that kind of makes you slowly float to the ground, or this one that makes you kind of have rocket thrusters. So these kind of notions where
like small skill trees.
Yeah, small.
You'll start with kind of a move set that
that you can
what you really kind of like and what you want to gravitate towards, and put your points, I guess, towards that. We don't really have anything that.
We have designs on the skill tree, but not.
Yeah.
It's not been implemented yet. These are just plans because we're just so early in development, less than a year at this point.
Pipe dream.
Yeah. So that's the extent of the character customization. It's really more. It's for the most part gameplay oriented, and as far as like choices to be made in the story, there will be choices, but you pretty much are kind of writing a story. And so in that way, I guess it's kind of like a Japanese RPG a little bit, right? Where you kind of you're just given this character. You can name them in Japanese RPGs and stuff, but other than that, you're just kind of like you're kind of on this storyline path. Maybe how we let that path be unveiled, we're trying to leave up to the player as much as possible. So it's not kind of holding your hand.
Maybe like a branching level path as well, kind of like Star Fox.
Yeah. I mean, there's some decisions we still have to make.
Yeah.
Okay, so you went into a bit of detail about it before, but when the game is out there and available to the world, like, how will it play exactly?
Mojo. We can both give a little bit of something. What would you say?
How will it play?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll start. I'd say I would describe it as feeling like almost like a Mega Man X kind of game, where it was very much about feeling very tight and sharp, and being very much about being able to like explore space vertically as well as horizontally. So you got your kind of dash and your dash jumping onto far distances, as well as this kind of like wall slide, wall jump kind of vertical climbing ability. And so
we got the grab feature in there.
That's what really kind of makes us different from Mega Man. As far as like the biggest probably element is the grab that makes it different. It kind of adds more of almost a parkour type element, which I mean, to put it to akin to something, it's kind of at this point it's close to almost like it's not quite Assassin's Creed. It's not like it's not quite like maybe Breath of the Wild or like a Lara Croft from the more recent Tomb Raider games. But there's a stamina system, and grabbing walls and ledges and stuff is very much a part of the kind of almost like parkouring type
kind of
platforming
ricocheting off of enemies too. You can attack in like 4 directions: up, down, left, and right. And you can kind of bounce off enemies, kind of like DuckTales.
Yeah. Like that. There's
you kind of launch yourself through the level.
So like you can bounce off of enemies with a correctly timed like down attack while you're in the air, or you can use a dash on the ground or the air. And then there's like all these little subtle things that we try to pull from a lot of places. So there's even like hints in there that like are like from our Mario 64 playing days, where we were like, we loved that pivot jump you did with Mario when you would reverse your momentum and you'd get this like tall like cartwheel in the air type of acrobatic jump. And so we were like, let's find a way to put that in. So when you dash, if you kind of press the opposite direction, you kind of enter this skidding state, trying to like almost kind of cancel the dash momentum. And if you jump during that, then you jump in this almost like a gymnast's like triple axel flip type of thing, and you get more vertical height out of it. So it's kind of like this nice little context sensitive jump. So there is a lot to do with it's very much a platformer with these kind of parkour features, but we wanted to take all those like the attacks and the grab and everything to kind of integrate them so they're not simply just segregated to one part of the game like platforming. So in this case, we have all these platforming tools, but they're supposed to also double that to help you in a fight or trying to problem solve some kind of puzzle or whatever. So if you're grabbing a wall, you're doing it to climb up a wall so you can kind of parkour a situation, or you're using grab to grab an enemy who's shielding himself, or you could use grab to grab an object that's interactive for a puzzle solving situation. So the grab kind of has this like multifaceted explore, platform, fight, and puzzle solve functionality. And it's I guess what one of our kind of themes is to be influenced by fighting games, very namely Smash Brothers series, because that's the idea of why you have the multiple different directions of the attacks. The attacks have knockback. They even give you a little bit of bounce. And there's this rock, paper, scissors that goes on with the attack, the grab, and the block. So that there's very much about figuring out like, okay, this is a very defensive enemy. He's guarding. I'm going to want to grab in this situation. or this is an enemy who relentlessly attacks. I'm going to need to use my defenses to deal with them. You can, reflect even projectiles with a well-timed block, and you can even like kind of parry attacks with a well-timed melee attacks with a well-timed block, so you can kind of get a good reaction. So that's where the action elements come in, and it's starting to take elements from like fighting games as well as maybe like some like action RPGs, like you could say like Castlevania or something, but it's or Zero from Mega Man X series. But yeah, we're kind of trying to toss so many things from our past into this, so many retro games that we kind of grew up playing. It starts to feel like it's an amalgamation of so many things, to us at least, So
yeah, and trying to make it all work is, it's a challenge, but it's like, it's a goal of ours, definitely. Just we want the platform to be fun. We want getting through the level to be fun, but also we want that challenge of, having to fight enemies and, explore. Like, I'd say 1/3 platforming, 1/3 exploration, 1/3 combat. It's just the way that I'm looking at it.
Yeah. Well, I guess like platforming and exploration have a lot of crossover, but they don't really mean the same thing, right? And then somehow puzzle solving is kind of in that too, because puzzle solving is probably, you could argue it's about a part of the exploring element maybe in that trifecta. But yeah, it's kind of like this is kind of like weird triangle kind of design approach. We've like stick to 3 everything. Yeah, it's like the magic number of classic simplicity of variation or whatever. Yeah,
and there's like you said, there's a lot of crossover between.
Yeah, we try to
like we want combat to play into the platforming and vice versa.
Right. So if you're like say climbing on the ceiling, and you can literally, as long as you have enough stamina, you're just kind of climbing along the ceiling, hanging. You can attack, and you could use any one of your directional attacks to deal with a situation. And if you're sliding down a wall, you can block an attack that's coming at you. Things like that, where these things start to cross over. You can jump in the air and grab, and so it's these things are all supposed to intersect, and so that they're not isolated powers, but kind of a small list of powers: attack, block, jump, grab, and dash. And then we gave a projectile attack, and we do have some other plans, but that's the fundamental kind of control scheme, I'd say.
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay then, so I've noticed in the materials I saw at Boston Fig and also your website, that your hero just kind of has his gear, but a lot of the enemies, including, I believe, what I think might be one of the bosses in the trailer, which is the big old bear, that it's a lot of a nature meets technology aesthetic. So did the idea to make like a nature hero meet against like technology-based villain, did that come from any place specific, or did you just like get the idea one day while planning the game?
I'd say, Mega Man's kind of a huge influence.
Mega Man's a huge influence.
Same with Sonic.
But I'd say that dynamic is more from Sonic, the nature versus technology.
Yeah.
As a kid, it was a huge game for me. I loved Sonic in elementary school. It was just all about the original Sega Genesis Sonic games. Sonic 3 and Knuckles was like my pinnacle as a kid. And you always start in these kind of like idyllic natural settings as these like, these cute little animal characters, and then you progress in this story arc towards more and more of a technological dystopia. And so and you're kind of freeing your friends from this kind of like cyborg imprisonment. So I'd say if you like took Sonic and like really thought about what the heck's happening here, and maybe kind of flesh it out and made it a little more mature to some degree, I'd say that's a big influence, I'd say, on that concept of the nature versus technology element. But even beyond that, I'd say what I personally find concerning to myself in the world is the evolution of technology. And I really am interested in evolution as well. So I'm kind of myself looking philosophically at the conflicts we as an animal that's evolved on this planet with our own natural behaviors and designs to come to terms with this modern world we've found ourselves in and constructed for ourselves.
Like, are things moving too fast?
Yeah, they're evolving so fast, and we can't really evolve at that same rate as technology does. And so there's some kind of conflict that seems inevitable between, these kind of two, I don't know what you want to say, these two, this thing that's, we're evolving together, but at the same time, there's like a potential conflict between an element of who we are that maybe has to be, I don't know what's going to happen exactly. That's part of what we're investigating when we design this game. The end is not fully written in our narrative at this point. We're still, it's still, the story is still in a rough state, but we have,
and I don't know, it's just a very basic thing that creates a lot of good conversations, and I think, and creates a lot of unique situations that we can play off of. So I don't know, I think it's just a really strong theme to start with.
And it's fun just visually to look at, and like that. We're not trying to be like, oh, technology bad, nature good. I'd like to mix it up. Be like, man, some things in nature are kind of fucked up, and some things are some things that we do as a society and with technology are good too. And so
we definitely want to show the brutality of nature. We both
there's
like
a little yin and
nature.
yang.
We both like nature documentaries, and if you watch those, you see a lot of screwed up things happening. Like, oh wow, it just got pretty real out there, but it's survival.
Right. Yeah. And then that's what. So survival is a big part of the theme, and it's just it's we can question things like morality as what what's right and wrong in a world that's changing. That changes and so it's just about that conflict, I guess, and like Ken said, there's so much to mine from it to build off of, that you can go so many directions with it, because we're not really trying to say one way or the other, like I said, technology bad, nature good, or vice versa. But we just have to examine kind of this conflict. I mean, like I said, we are concerned about the way technology evolves, but we don't think it's entirely bad. Our protagonist uses technology. That's one of his one of his powers, essentially granted him by this technological glove, this technological marvel of a glove that he happens to possess, which is somewhat unique to him. And so the technology is still wielded by this wild animal or whatever. And I think also by making everybody animals, it kind of reminds people that we as humans are animals. Don't forget, so often we just think of ourselves as these completely almost unearthly beings to some degree, these abstract kind of concepts, but we are animals too. And so I feel like when you swap out and start to make the characters animals, there's some fun things you can do with that, similarly to ideas like Animal Farm, for instance, which has got entire anthropomorphic cast, exception, I guess, of the few humans in it, but it's a setting where they can kind of say some maybe more sophisticated stuff than what you'd expect out of a Mickey Mouse cartoon, which is also anthropomorphic in nature. And so I guess we're trying to make something that maybe has mature content to it, but at the same time has some of that beautiful, fresh, colorful kind of almost it's some part cute or some part simplified or childlike, the cartoon style, but still, we're, what I'm trying to say, I guess, is we can still say, sophisticated or mature things with cartoonish symbols, because in the end, all the stories, all the characters are ultimately just symbols. And it's just the style maybe doesn't seem, it seems it should maybe market itself to a younger audience. Somebody might think at a cursory glance, somebody's not really into games, but we're really trying to target probably people who grew up playing these old retro games. And so, you do have that childhood nostalgic memory when you were a kid playing that old Sega Genesis or Super Nintendo or regular Nintendo or whatever it was. Even N64, I guess, it still feels at that point for us, it still feels retro to me or whatever. And then beyond that, it starts to feel like it's really shifted. But we're still playing to that, but we know this audience is older, we are. I'm 31 myself, and Ken, you're 30,
I'm 33.
33. So so
we're maybe a little more substance.
A little more substance, right?
Yeah.
It's so if 2D games kind of evolved with us and kept up with us, rather than kind of in a way abandoning the 2D games and going the three-dimensional route, and then kind of going the design routes of I mean, like essentially the last decade or so or more, right? Where we've definitely, or 2 decades at this point. Yeah, geez, it's like we've definitely seen like an alternate path, right? Like this is almost like my vision. Like imagine if we never went 3D and we just had to do something after the Super Nintendo, and it was more evolved, but was still kind of in that lineage. I was upset when I first saw some of the low poly 3D games as a kid. It was like this holds nothing to the best sprite art, in my opinion as a kid. But I actually it's grown on me too, so it's got that same nostalgic.
Definitely, yeah. Old PlayStation graphics definitely grown
a little bit.
They're really dirty looking, but
yeah.
I don't know. They have their own little charm.
Right. Yeah. I like the low poly with the low res pixel art is attractive
weird
to me. I'd like to try something
bodies, like just misshapen, the square bodies.
And like what I really like about pixel art and the low res and the low poly stuff too is that it kind of leaves room for the viewer to use their imagination a little bit and kind of see into it, and it almost becomes like a pointillist impressionist painting where it's like this mosaic. It's just this thing with just enough resolution to tell you what it is, and then your mind's supposed to kind of fill the rest in yourself, and that doesn't not every little detail has to get rendered or whatever.
Yeah, that's the only kind of art that I really even keep up with now when I'm looking at things online, like art online and stuff, just for inspiration. It's all like pixel art. It's I don't know. It's just amazing.
Well, yeah, that hopefully that thoroughly answered the question.
Yeah.
Yep. So you mentioned before that you're just about a year into Feral Frontiers development, but do you have like a rough ballpark estimate as to like when you'd like to see it fully released?
We've been talking, and we're thinking hopefully it would be nice to have a game finished by like 2020. We'll see how far we get as we go.
We haven't even technically been working a year on this thing.
Right, we've been working for maybe 6 months.
No, I'd say like 9 months. Yeah. Like 9 months ago, we really probably I don't know. Maybe I'm roughly it's like that. Maybe a little less or something.
I think it was.
Oh yeah, no, it was probably earlier. It was probably less than 9 months. Maybe it was 8 months at this point.
That's 8 months. Yeah,
8 months. So maybe it was like 8 months ago. We kind of literally began this iteration. We had been messing around with each other for years, like over this past decade, on and off, playing around.
Yeah.
And in the last like 8 months, we began this, and
we're like, let's get serious.
And we tried to hit a couple deadlines, and kind of So it's still new. So you just had a kid, and so we're doing this part time on our free time, and so it's just like two guys part time on their free time. We managed to get this done in 8 months, and so we really want to just get really polished vertical slice, and then from there kind of like really see how far we can push this for the next year. And we're considering potentially trying to do a Kickstarter or something eventually. And I guess like as long as if we can really have the kind of core of this thing designed, then the Kickstarter will really just determine how many levels we can really put into this, how far can we really take this thing in depth. But but the core will be there before we want to be really confident about that before we even ask for anything, because we're not really funded in any way at this point, and we're just two guys doing it in our free time, so we would love to.
Sometimes I get home, I'm like, all right, I gotta work on this game now.
We would love to, be able to work on this thing like a full-time studio. And I think given what we have produced in the period of time, because there's just the two of us, if we did have the funds, I think we could very well produce quality content at a pretty decent rate, given what we have managed.
Oh, yeah. So absolutely.
So that's that. So,
we got the groundwork laid, I think.
We are
a lot of it laid.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, let's being realistic. Like we're still new to this, and we don't have a really super awesome way to predict. Like many studios, even the best, seem to have their challenges in this way. So like anything, it's just kind of a goal, and I think it's something that could be met as long as we kind of keep to our original focus and don't get sidetracked by adding too much stuff, which a lot of people tend to do. I think they kind of they try to restate. They don't know how to rescale their operation by adding more people or scale it up per se.
Yeah.
And so that's why we want to make sure we're really confident with it before we even try to kickstart. So
Yeah.
we don't have like a really like hard date that we would even do the Kickstarter, but it would at least be next year or something at earliest. So,
Yeah, that's our goal.
So and then we want to deliver it hopefully within a year. I don't like to kickstart and then make people wait forever and all that stuff. Like I just think that's it's not going to be people will you'll forget about it. You'll be like, why does it take so long? It's not as good as my expectations were. All those things.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be better.
You want to keep it fresh in people's minds,
I'd like
especially once you start asking for money. You definitely want it to start rolling a lot harder.
Yeah, and this is all pretty new for us, and so
Absolutely,
we don't really know the best way to go about all doing all these things. We're kind of figuring out as we go, and so we don't really. We don't really have. I guess like we don't want to be out there like begging people inappropriately and stuff. We want to be as we're gamers ourselves, and we want to make something that we as gamers would respect. When we see things like Shovel Knight, we're like they made this game. It was a good quality game, and then they just continuously add content to it, and they just keep fleshing out.
That's something. Yeah,
that's something we would be interested in doing ourselves.
Starting with a few levels or something, and just kind of adding on to the game as we go. Post release, even like supporting it if it sells well, and just kind of keeping it going, not jumping to the next thing. Like a master collection.
Yeah,
I'd love like a pinnacle version of the game.
Yeah, but we haven't like decided that model or whatever. But I personally really do like how Yacht Club Games kind of is like, well, you bought the game, and we're just going to keep polishing this because we want to grow the number of people who are really into this thing and make sure that it's really quality. So when you come to us, you're going to get something really quality. And so that's something that we both liked about it. We just don't like the whole like EA download ROI DLC that doubles the price of the game, and we have to make you play 40 hours of gameplay. Like, we're not really interested in creating a 40-hour game or anything.
People are getting sick of that.
Yeah, we don't want to sell you something. We want to sell you something that doesn't take you all your money and all your life energy and time. And so we want to be respectful of that. So we're not planning on any crazy grandiose kind of thing. So we're just shooting for something that's a side-scroller 2D platformer pixel game that's just done with the right aesthetics, with people who just who are gamers themselves, who love games, who just want something that feels that way. And we're not coming here with some crazy experimental concept or anything like that. We're just like, man, we're just trying to make the thing that feels right to us. Yeah.
Okay. So, like, what platforms would you prefer to be able to release it on once it's, ready to be sent out there to the world?
Well, the first thing we're definitely going to release it on is PC, but we'd love to get it onto all the consoles, Switch, PS4, Xbox, but really just anything that we can. Like the more that we can push the game out, the more we will. Definitely, that in a realistic way,
Yeah, I mean, it might be the kind of thing where we might have to start with an initial PC release.
Yeah.
On Steam or something like that, and then from that kind of basis, push towards creating a hard copy version or something, or a digital version on the consoles. If we can't promise those things. We're so we're so early in our process. I think our game has to reach a state where we can be confident that there's enough people who are really interested in it that would warrant being able to make it onto those consoles, being able to get a hard copy for somebody if they really wanted it. Because we do see that people are interested in that kind of thing, especially people who like these retro games, and we totally understand why somebody would want a hard copy. It makes entire sense to me. It just comes down to our feasibility of a studio, to be able to promise that, because if you don't get enough people who want a hard copy, you're gonna be
screwed.
Yeah, pretty much.
You print a bunch of copies of your game, and then
the cost, it'll be too.
Just sitting in the side of your room.
You'll be losing money just to offer that. So I mean, ideally we would love it, but we haven't entered into any negotiations on what that would be, and so we don't have any mathematics on how many people would have to support our Kickstarter for that at this point. But yeah, we would love it to be on a console. It's intended to be played with a controller. It's got the whole spirit of a console experience. It's definitely going to be a game that you can sit on your couch in your living room and play it. And that's a lot of what our core old gaming experience comes from. And so we're kind of hearkening back to that experience. And, I mean, I guess that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, then now it's time for the question that everyone who's ever been on the show understands perfectly all the time, always, and never gets mixed up about it in any way. So, in your opinion, is video games?
Yes. Is video games?
Is video games? Yeah, I guess so. I mean,
It is.
if you're asking if video games exist,
So, all right then. So
yeah. What is that supposed to mean?
Yeah, where does that go?
it's not really designed to go anywhere. It's like
I'm sorry.
I like to think of it as like the word equivalent of the inkblot test, where it really doesn't have an actual clear-cut answer, and it really depends on who you're asking it to.
Because the second thing that makes me think of is like, were video games?
Or what is a video game, or what constitutes what we think of as a philosophy of what makes a video game, and I think that I could talk about. Like maybe that's I guess there's a lot of things that we like experience that I enjoy, and we all, many of us enjoy, that I don't know if I would technically consider it a video game, and that's okay, and it's just something kind of different or whatever, and maybe if you need to kind of use video games to and market across that those overlapping demographics, that makes perfect sense. But some things feel to me more like an interactive experience, and then other things to me feel like a video game. And I guess what the difference for me is, I feel like what makes a video game is that the player has agency to make decisions in the world to solve a problem, basically overcome a challenge, create the solution to a challenge that was being presented, and that the challenge allows for all these potential behaviors of the player, but to come to the solution. Now, you may say not all the potentials solve the solution, and maybe only one action solves the solution, but the player had total freedom to take all those actions. So they can choose to walk off the cliff, or try to jump over it, or do something else, depending on what you give them. And to me, in my opinion, like what makes a good game is giving a player these situations where there are challenges. So not all your options will allow you to overcome this obstacle, but you have multiple ways of still overcoming that obstacle. That's what makes the game exciting to me, because it allows the player to have freedom of expression, their agency. They can be creative with how they decide to do something, whether it be walk right up to it, or glide over to it, or climb up to it, or something like that. There's all these different ways of kind of approaching or overcoming that problem.
So the more you can play with it, I guess the more you can manipulate it.
Well, that's part of it. But you need a goal, and you need a challenge that kind of creates resistance to that goal. And then my opinion is, once you reach that goal, unless it's some kind of micro game, that presents you as some unit of progress towards what is ultimately a grander goal, so that you have these kind of small game loops, these little cycles of presented with a challenge, kind of problem solve your own way to overcome that challenge, be rewarded for doing so in a way that changes how you can solve challenges going forward in the future, and then present them with a new challenge so that you can repeat this cycle. And then these cycles kind of form these little units that themselves form a greater cycle, which is ultimately leads up to the scale of the whole arc of beating the game is the final challenge. But there's a series of essentially like almost like fractal, like little challenges along the way that you have to overcome. And so it's kind of what makes a good game to me is one that essentially can create this compelling game loop that has like this kind of freedom to have agency on problem solving to overcome a challenge. Overcoming that challenge, like I said, rewards you in a way that actually affects the way that you can overcome challenges in the future. In my opinion, that's a compelling game, because then you get progress from loop to loop. It changes every loop, and you get this experience of progress. And I think that's what brings the player back. A lot of times you play a game and the character doesn't evolve, it doesn't get new abilities, he doesn't get customized or specialized in any way, and you kind of get a sense of what the core experience is early, and then you get kind of bored after a while, and you don't really want to see it through to the end. There's so many games I have that are just completely
unless
unfinished.
the level design, evolves.
Well, yeah, the level design can and there are times where that is the case where the level design really
you can
pushes
start with a system that's the same throughout the whole game.
It's true.
It's
possible. I'm not saying it's not possible. I think that's the case.
Like
Mario, exactly.
Yeah.
Mario's a perfect example. You have pretty much all your abilities. They do things to mix it up, like give you capes and other things.
Yeah.
But you pretty much have all your abilities right from the beginning, and you kind of just have to master using them. And the levels are designed in such a way that they give you a novel experience. And they offer maybe in bite-sized ways, so you can kind of come back and pick it up and remember where you were or whatever.
Sure.
So that definitely happens. But like at this point, like for us to kind of revisit that like almost Mario experience, I guess like we would have to have really maybe it would change the design focus of the game a lot, about what we're trying to do or whatever. And we still obviously can actually push that, like the level design really changes, and we do have ideas for that. But I think like we both like games like Castlevania and Metroid. We both like games like Castlevania and Metroid and a bunch of other games that essentially have some kind of player progression. Just because I think what it does is it expands the kind of scope of creative options the player has. Mm-hmm. So that like because really if your game's deep enough, it can merit it that like it can be good enough that you don't need all these like new powers or whatever to make it through. That's definitely possible. But at the same time, I think a game like that is still, it's only so deep in a sense. It's meant to be picked up and played and forgotten about and handed off and all those kind of things. Whereas like I think what we're trying to make is a game that you kind of pick up, kind of play hopefully play it till its completion, and didn't take you too long. It's not. We didn't plan like a 40-hour campaign or anything for this.
But you feel like you grew somehow throughout the experience.
Yeah, I would say. Like your and your character.
Yeah, your character at the end of the game is a lot different from the beginning.
And that relates to the narrative, I'd say.
Yeah.
Because like Mario, like he's not like gaining all these powers to overcome Bowser.
Right. He's just Mario.
He's just already the hero. Yeah. Right. And so like dramatically, I don't feel like it has as much like it doesn't have as much of a dramatic oomph. And so so when I say like games that I consider good, my own personally, I like it when they do have that progression. Like even if sometimes it's just as shallow as like numerical increments, like you play like a Dark Souls game. Right. You're just increasing ever so slightly the damage you do, per attack or whatever. Even that gives a sense of progression. I think it also kind of helps the player like be incentivized because there's novelty at the end of this challenge. I like it's going to change. I get a new weapon or I get a new power, right? In the case of our game, I get a new ability or something. So there's an incentive. You're excited because you want to see how that changes the game. It kind of encourages you when you die to not give up, because guess what? While even though you were defeated, you did collect some experience points and level up, and maybe it'll be a little bit easier next time because now you can put this point into your strength or something like that.
See, to that point, I feel like then it's less of game and more like real life, and because you're always kind of striving to grow and always striving to.
I guess it's mirroring like the games. I don't think games should be real life. I don't because then they can't occupy their unique niche of being a game. But I think like obviously we want life to kind of bleed into it a little bit, right? Because there's some games like Ark Survival Evolved or whatever, like really cool game. Like I've enjoyed playing that game, but you basically it gets so close to having to like replace your actual life that it's like unhealthy to you as a gamer, right? and like. And it's some of the coolest things I've ever done in a game, like be a pirate and like ransack a person's, base and just the fun, wild stuff that happens that feels so significant in that game because their base isn't just something that the game provided for them. It's something they had to like toil to create from scratch with their own creative potential outcomes. So the base is totally unique to them. No two bases are the same,
Right.
And they made this with all their blood, sweat, and tears, and it took all this time, and you could just come and raid it. That's what gave it the weight, but because there was a lot of time invested. But so in part, it's what made that game good. Is also what makes that game not good to me because it's like the amount of time investment.
Kind of chores.
It's because it's too grindy, too chore like, and you just. It's like you can't to play games like that is not really to play games. It's to like decide that you're living in an alternate reality almost, right?
Yeah.
It's like you're not really playing a game anymore at that point. You're almost like because life's a game if you want to talk about
totally.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
So like you're not really playing like a video game anymore. You're just kind of trying to like blur the boundaries between life and video games. And some people who can kind of get in there in some of those games like Diablo in the old days or even some other I'm sure there's some games these days that do it too, where there's people who grind and then they actually make a paycheck.
Right, exactly. Yeah, we're grinding through life. We're like, oh, we want to save up to get, new apartment, new car, house. You have a kid. I just had a kid. It's like now I got to like save up for a bunch of other stuff. And now a bunch of whole new challenges have opened to me. It's like now I have to kind of tackle those challenges and grow throughout life. Where like when we go back to the core thing that is like Mario, you have Mario. Like that is the purest form, I guess, to me, of a game.
One good thing about Mario, though, because he doesn't have the character progression, because ultimately what it forces you there is as a player to master the controls, so you as the player grow rather than just the character grows.
Yeah.
Though I do think it's exciting for the character to kind of grow too.
Yeah.
It can be
I'm
fun
not saying it isn't. I'm just like to this question.
Yeah. It's still like Mario's a game for sure. Yeah. You don't need to have player progression. It's just something that I think adds to to that whole loop, that fundamental game loop or whatever. So is that a satisfying rant?
Yeah. So, how did the two of you first discover video games?
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, games have been apparent in my life since, the very beginning. I grew up in like a video store, basically. My mom worked at a Video Marquee down the street. The owners, Peter and Sylvia, they were awesome. We'd hang out there, behind the counter all the time. I'd hang out there like pretty much every day. Every Christmas they'd give us. This was the key aspect, I feel like, is we didn't have a lot of money in our family, but at the same time, like my mom worked at the video store and Peter and Sylvia are awesome. So every Christmas, the big system of that year, or whatever system dropped every couple of years, they just give it to us. Probably maybe like to solidify us, going in and renting games every week. I don't know, but I just had that experience of just every week we were like renting new games. So like, and they got like they had like every game under the sun. They didn't get rid of them. Like that's why like it sucked when like Blockbuster came around, and then you had this like very small selection where like, they switch stuff out like that
like
becomes
obsolete.
Yeah. Like I'm doing obsolete like finger quotes over here you can't see, but like, yeah, I don't know. That was just a huge part of my life. I feel like just like growing up in a video store atmosphere really just pushed video games just to the next level in my life, I guess.
Yeah, for me, my mom actually introduced it. I'm kind of surprised because she's not really a huge gamer, but she every once in a while seems to have just like, I don't know what it is, it's just keeping up with the Joneses. Like TV tells you buy this thing or whatever, and so she just did it because that's what you're supposed to do or whatever, and it looks fun, and I think she actually was kind of intrigued by it, which is kind of interesting. When you think about it, like. You should never grew up playing video games or anything, and out of nowhere, like Nintendo's like, hey, we got this Nintendo Entertainment System. And my mom was just like,
wow, what is this?
Yeah, and I guess she just thought, that'd be something the kids would like, and maybe I'd like it too or something.
Yeah.
And, she
I remember playing like Mario and Zelda with my mom, and my mom would make it like farther than us.
Yeah. She like eventually, we got the Sega Genesis and stuff. My mom was the driving force. Like she chose the systems. I didn't choose them. Like I wasn't asking for them. Like my mom actually, my mom actually went out and like picked the system. And I think TV like marketing was huge on her. And so whatever. At some point, the Nintendo got old seeming, and Sega Genesis was the new thing, and she got it. And it was very much for us kids, because I have two sisters, and so we were as there's three of us. So it was definitely, at least you could use partially as an excuse that it was for us kids. But she actually played it, like the original Nintendo. She played it.
Yeah.
She like introduced me and played. She was playing the old Mario and the very first one, and then we play like Sonic 2 when we got this bundled with the Sega Genesis, and then eventually I remember one day I came home from school and my mom's already playing Sonic 3.
Nice.
and I had like dreams of it, oh man, like I'd have dreams of what Sonic 3 felt like, and I was like, oh, this must be what it feels like.
Yeah.
And then I come home one day and then she's just already playing it, and I was like, oh man, that's so cool. And we were just renting it from Blockbuster. And we were just like, we're going to keep it late, and she'll pay the extra. And she was like, and the thing was, we didn't have a lot of money either. We're just like, we live in very, like, I was on food stamps in school, and had like, we lived in an apartment, and then like yeah, definitely not a fancy background or anything.
Well, I feel like having brothers and sisters too, like definitely perpetuates like the gaming too. Like especially back then, like there was there were so many 2-player games, or like multiplayer games. So like and it was all about sitting on the couch with your friends or your family or whatever, and like playing games like Toe Jam and Earl, like Zombies Ate My Neighbors. Like that was like my jam.
Yeah, a lot of those games. It's about being in the community space and playing like with people and stuff. Yeah. I mean, to this day, like a huge part of my gaming is with my girlfriend. You know what I mean? Like so, like.
Now I'm antisocial now, so I just play like 1-player games. I don't even play online. I don't want to talk to fucking anybody. And like fucking, I just come home from work. And like,
No, I respect that. Like that's fun. Like I feel like lately I'm like, man, I've been neglecting the 1-player games. Oops, whatever. I've been neglecting the 1-player games, and that's what I feel lately. I've been we do so much social gaming, so we're trying to do this thing where we just together play a 1-player game. Like hey, like take turns or just kind of enjoy it. And it's like I said, we don't watch TV or anything like that. We barely watch anything else except for
screw TV.
Except for like YouTube guys we listen to.
There's some good shows, but I guess I just have Netflix.
Yeah. I have Netflix too.
I work with a guy, and he's always like, "Dude, did you see that commercial? Have you ever seen that commercial?"
I have no idea.
People like talk about commercials now.
Yeah, no, I like I'm so unplugged from like whatever the mainstream is in most conditions, except for I guess video games is what I'm most informed about when it comes to mainstream things.
Right.
But yeah, we're just kind of isolated, listening to our own things and playing our own things and whatnot. And I play a lot of like indie games myself. I'm a big indie game player. I play a lot of ROMs. I play a lot of ROM hacks. So I'm playing things that just random stuff and my most played game is probably an indie game now. Yeah.
Dude. I had so many Mario ROM hacks. Mario
I even tried to make them myself.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
They just changed like the skin of Mario. I remember we had Mario Brothers, well, just on emulator, but it was like Mario Brothers, ICP Brothers.
Oh yeah.
And it was just like it was
terrible sprites.
Yeah.
Of course they are. Yeah, they're always terrible sprites. Except there's one awesome Mario hack that has beautiful sprites, and it was just like so incomplete, like they always end up being. But it was my mom, man. My mom just like and then for some reason I think it just was like, oh wow, this really gripped me because I already really loved cartoons. I was already like fascinated with animation. I loved Mickey Mouse, and then here's Sonic the Hedgehog, which is just like Mickey Mouse, but you can control him. So I was like, oh man, now I get to practice agency with this character. I get to like be this character, play as this character, and that's so compelling to. I think like especially little boys, because I think there's this element where. You just need to kind of like I don't know if it's a ADD thing or whatever, but it's kind of like instead of just watching something and listen to something, you want to kind of do something. You want to be active and kind of and there's a system and there's physics and there's all these things and those things can be interesting to you and so it's kind of it's an alternative to playing outside and running around and playing tag and doing all those other kind of game like things anyway. And so
dude, I wrote a Zelda play when I was in like second grade. It wasn't like a very long play. I tried to get it going at like recess and like give out parts.
Didn't
really pan out very well, but I did write
did you plan on starring in it yourself?
Of course.
Like you can't write it and have somebody else be. It's like, oh. But like I remember in second grade I wrote a comic book that was basically Sonic the Hedgehog, and it was supposed to be Speedy and his sidekick Zoomy. But Speedy and Zoomy, and my teacher was like, she just misunderstood that entirely. So she's like, oh, so your project is Speedy, Zoomy, and sidekick. So there was 3 people now. And I was just like, yeah. And I just went with it.
Definition of a third wheel. Yeah. Oh, my name is Sidekick.
Yeah, so then I made a third character and just rolled with that. Like just being a little kid and just like trying to play along with like, yeah, this is what I meant. And then I just made that character. But yeah, it was totally animals versus technology. And there was like a scene in the end where you're fighting this big like Dr. Robotnik robot and there's like what I observed as a kid that were the problems of my day, just seeing like McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts wrappers on the ground, just like things that are just like that's the extent of the dystopia, and it's some
maybe
old dead tree.
Story,
yeah. But
like Planet of the Apes at the end, it's just like a big Dunkin' Donuts cup sticking out like
yeah. Like that was like the extent of of how bad things got in that world. But some Dunkin' Donuts. Because I don't know, I remember being at the bus stop and being like, that's disgusting. And so maybe there's a little bit of environmentalist element to it or whatever. But Yeah, no. I say, yeah, my mom. And I probably got into it also just because I already was kind of a quiet, like, want to go on my own and draw and kind of do my own thing and just be in my own headspace and stuff. And sometimes it's also good to escape if you have like, if you're having family problem. I had some as a kid, and so like it was a good place to kind of just run away and kind of be in a video game is a way to kind of like, I guess, just kind of go, and you can't always go outside, or it's too late, or it's too, you still want to play,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think like some of those things, it's just a kid coping with having to deal with life. And I got a Game Boy and I can bring Pokemon everywhere I go, like, so it's like this way to kind of like maybe to comfort yourself in all these scenarios you find yourself in as a kid or whatever, I guess.
That's when Final Fantasy VII Cloud, you could really relate to him at that point. You're like, yeah, this fucking guy.
That was totally. I had no idea when I first played Final Fantasy VII. I was like, I had no idea what this was. Then I got into Pokemon, and then I came back and I was like, oh, okay, I get it. And then I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. You kind of already answered the next question, which was what were your favorite game and/or games growing up. So I guess we can.
Well, I'll throw in Earthbound, because that game is like a huge influence on me. I don't know. Like, that game just like blew my mind when I was a kid. Just the exploration factor of it, just like the surprises that it threw at you every like corner, and just like
and the
what's
art
going to
style.
happen next. The art
cool.
style was really cool. I remember two people like panned that game. They're like, the graphics are like shitty in this game. Yeah. Like, oh no, dude.
It's not realistic.
Yeah.
Yeah, like people who like are concerned with realism. But yeah, if I want to rattle some off, okay, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles, Super Smash Bros, all of them, pretty much the entire Mario series, but Super Mario Brothers 3, Super Mario World, and Super Mario 64 particularly for me. So, and then we got Pokemon Red, man. That was like a way of life at one point. For me, Diablo 2 was pretty big for me. Smash Brothers Melee was like pinnacle, and
all the Castlevania games for me.
Yeah, I've definitely played a lot of them. I have not played all of them, but I've played quite a bit of them, and I do enjoy them. But yeah, like they didn't hit the critical periods. Like I think like for me, where I was just playing them all the time. Sonic was like playing all the time. I was playing Pokemon all the time. I put Final Fantasy VII as one of my favorite RPGs. But even Final Fantasy VII, like the amount of hours I put into that compared to like Pokemon, Pokemon probably dwarfs it. But Smash Brothers dwarfs Pokemon. Smash Brothers. That's what I like.
For you, I'm saying, for you, just the amount of hours exactly. You told me about.
Smash Brothers is like awesome. I'm like, Awesome Knots is a game that nobody even knows about, so I don't even bring it up. But like, it is Awesome Knots and Smash Brothers are like my two most played games. Both of them are 2D side-scrolling, action-based kind of competitive games, and one's more of like Awesome Knots is like this awesome. Check it out, it's free to play. If you're listening, like I'd love to go and school you in that game. So
Awesome Knots,
come and join and get destroyed. But basically, it's a super small game played by a really small community now. But it's so cool because it's like it's a 2D side-scrolling MOBA, and you get to use WSAD to move and the mouse to aim. So you still kind of get that like awesome platforming, Twitch kind of aiming movement experience. You're not like I hate that like playing Diablo 2 MOBAs type experience where you're like left clicking everything. Like that stuff I can't stand that. But this, you have gravity and you can kind of juke people like on a dime because So Awesome Knots is definitely one of those games that I have a love-hate relationship with it because it is MOBA, and MOBAs are evil genre, but I also love playing it at the same time. Yeah. It's kind of a weird thing, but it doesn't have this abusive number of heroes, and it doesn't have all these like it's just this cool thing. Maybe there's like 40 characters in it now, and that's like it's like pretty much probably as big as it's going to be.
But I'm sad they're not making new Tony Hawk games.
Oh, dude,
I was very much into the Tony Hawk games, especially Tony Hawk 2.
Oh, Tony Hawk 2.
That game like blew my mind. Like just like that
level
game was
creator?
so fun. Yeah, level creator, totally. Yeah. You and my buddy would to sit there like all night making like the stupidest levels.
Yeah.
Trying to make, I don't know.
Any game with a level creator just gets me going crazy. Like RPG Maker, I used to play that on the PlayStation 1.
I rented that. I remember when I was a kid, I was like, this is too hard.
Yeah, it's not a game you can rent. It's not a game you can rent. So like I had it, and I inherited it from a kid who's like, oh, I'm done with PlayStation 1, and so I have a PS2 now, so I got it, and I would do sprite art, and I remember doing sprite art for it, and I just making my own characters, and some of the earliest sprite animations to actually be used in game, I was doing in that, as a kid, and So yeah, Game Maker was a cool one for game making stuff, and recently Mario Maker was pretty fun, right? But even then, there's a Super Mario World Maker that you can do on your computer, Lunar Magic or something like that, and then there's they even got Mega Man Maker, and people are trying to do Sonic ones, and I love all those concepts. I love making games in games too.
Yeah,
look at we're making a game.
Right, yeah. Most recent best game, I think, the Bloodborne for me, and Dark Souls 3, I guess. Like I like Bloodborne slightly better. And I played kind of backwards. I started with Bloodborne. I played Dark Souls 3, and then I played Dark Souls 1. I haven't played 2.
Play Dark Souls?
Yeah.
I played a little bit of all of them. I have not beaten any of them, and I do.
You don't need to. You don't need to beat them.
You don't need to be. But I played the most.
I beat Bloodborne. That's the only one that I actually beat. I'm at the final boss in Dark Souls 3, and then I went and played like some of the DLC, and then I got lost.
You
and
just
then I
stopped.
Said, fuck it. Yeah, I got to. I forget what I even got to. And I was just like, fuck this.
Okay, as far as more recent games for me, I mean, I really love Fallout series, but Fallout New Vegas was the best in my opinion.
Yeah,
I just feel like
3 got me into Fallout definitely, and then New Vegas just like
it's like the whole desert wasteland cowboy, kind of thing just fits with the whole Las Vegas thing. It all just fits so well.
I just liked the atmosphere of New Vegas. It was just kind of like happy-go-lucky, just like everything was about everything being a gamble. Like,
right. So there's juxtaposition about how shitty the world is, and then how that whole kind of weird 50s super marketing optimism kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So but another more recent game that I love, I guess this maybe makes us look old for some younger gamers, but Battlefield Bad Company 2, I still consider that a recent game in the grand scheme of
sure.
But it's that was a huge game for me in college with my friends. We play a lot of that, and so we play. I mean, we play all kinds of things, real time strategies, first person shooters,
Donkey Kong Country,
of course, Yoshi's Island, right? That was good. Mm-hmm. I mean, and then on Sega Genesis, there's still
there's so many. There's so many. Yeah. I mean, you could just whole Super Nintendo library.
Super
Nintendo. Like, what's your favorite system? Super Nintendo was probably, I thought, the best.
Super Nintendo was probably like the pinnacle system to me. Yeah. For like where games were going to us, because it did improve graphically on Nintendo. Mm-hmm. It improved gameplay wise on Nintendo, but it was like, you could say it's like in the same vein of a lot of those games, and it didn't have to get reinvented in any crazy way. They could like refine it and keep making it more sophisticated. And there's still room. There's still room for 2D pixel games to be made. It's not like they exhausted everything. So
I mean, like, you look at some of the biggest games now that like Stardew Valley, which Stardew Valley is amazing. I was a huge fan of Harvest Moon, like the first Harvest Moon. Right. I didn't really play. We had all the Harvest Moon games at my house, but I only really played the first one.
You can only argue that you can only really argue like FPS. And you could say maybe some real-time strategy games like that, those genres, and maybe there's some others. I'm not really, some subgenres, but those are like the two major genres that maybe didn't quite have a great place on like FPS, obviously not on Super Nintendo. And there's some strategy games on Super Nintendo, but very limited. Right. And so it's like maybe those games kind of missed out. So if you love those games, Super Nintendo wouldn't be a pinnacle console, but I mean, like, as far as there's so many good games, so many like good Japanese RPGs that are on that game system that I really like, and like you got Chrono Trigger,
Secret of Mana,
Secret of Mana, both solid games, and then any of the Final Fantasies like Final Fantasy 6 or what we call 3 here, or the other.
And for some reason, just Uniracers just popped into my brain.
A lot of people like that game. A lot of people like.
That game, like, I don't know, maybe that's why, like maybe Tony Hawk made me think of that, but it just had that speed and just like
Sonic,
flipping,
That's why I like Tony Hawk too, because playing Tony Hawk's a lot like playing Sonic. It's fun just to move, just to navigate the level.
Yeah.
The level navigation itself is just fun because there's just this whole element of momentum and controlling your balance and all that stuff, and then they can go on to add on top of that to make the game or whatever. And that's what Sonic's like too. It's just kind of once you master it, it can be really fun. You end up doing things the creators are like never intended, and I love that when that happens too.
It's crazy. Like Super Nintendo's still blowing my mind. Like I had never played. Like I've always had like emulators, and it's always been like one of the first games I always see because it's alphabetical order. ActRaiser. We played.
ActRaiser. Yeah, it's like an RPG. Yeah.
Like I could never I would always like click on it like back in like I was like middle school or high school or whatever. I'd be like, let's try ActRaiser. I forget what this game is. And then like it would start off and you're this little like cherub angel thing, and you're flying around. It looks like SimCity almost. And I'm like, and I love SimCity, but then I just couldn't wrap my head around it.
Yeah,
I was just like, this isn't what hear that name like ActRaiser, like you think it's gonna be like badass, and you're like, and then like so I never gave it a chance. But like recently, I actually sat down with it and played it. I was like, dude, this game is like Castlevania with like a city building thing, like on the side. It's like totally unique. Like I haven't played any other game like it. So I don't know, Super Nintendo.
No, you could argue then that starts to be like what's close to it now. Well, we just said Stardew Valley.
Yeah,
I almost called it Farmville. Stardew Valley.
Farmville.
Not that.
The greatest game ever
made. Or what about, is it Moonlighter? Moonlighter, they have these kind of phase-based things, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's like go explore, fight, adventure, and then you do this other second phase thing where it's like prepare or upgrade or manage. Yeah. You know, that's fun. And then ActRaiser is unique and early in that kind of thing. But yeah. Yeah, so I mean, obviously, like the 16-bit era is huge for us, but I mean, I really started on the NES, so I could go on with those two.
Yeah.
The original Metroid with NES.
Yeah, let's talk about every game. Let's just go through every game on the NES.
I know, right?
Fucking N64, even N64, dude. Wait, like
Fox and Nadu. Oh, N64. N64. I feel like N64 to me was kind of a letdown because it felt like it had a small library from the SNES. Because you had all this potential like third party. And the SNES was back when Nintendo had like led the third party. Yeah. They still owned it, and then they lost it, and then and they went to PlayStation. And then PlayStation 1 became the next Super Nintendo because it had all the games. If you had this niche design, like thing that you liked, you're gonna find that game on a PlayStation on an N64. But the core N64 games were really solid. Like I loved F-Zero. F-Zero X, I think it was on I would play the hell out of that game. Obviously, Smash Bros. Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie is a huge one. Yep. Huge one for me. Huge one for my girlfriend. She helps out with us.
Oh, I'm gonna just jump around. Around. Silent Hill is a huge game for me. I don't know. That just like that and like Resident Evil, but Silent Hill more so. Just because I don't know. It just like it brought me into that whole like. It got me into like more horror movie. It even got me more into horror movies. Like I wasn't into them like when I was a little kid. I was like I don't know. That just like opened up a whole new world to me.
I've been getting more into horror lately myself.
Thinking and just I don't know. That game had a lot of different parallels. You could think of it you could interpret it in a lot of different ways. So it just kind of freaking opened my mind, man. Expanded my mind.
So what good games should do, man. They should operate as art.
Yeah,
they're also art.
Yeah, they are art.
Interactive art
is art. Yeah.
So the last question on our docket is, what got the two of you into game design?
Oh, I mean, just loving playing games. I've always wanted to make games, like ever since I was a little kid. Never knew how to do it. It just seemed like magic to me. Or like you had to be really smart to do it, which, that's not true because I'm a fucking idiot. So
I was always intimidated
You just have to be able to sit there for a long time and think for a long time. I feel like I have patience. Yeah. But I don't know. Yeah, like Game Maker definitely unlocked a lot of doors. I started with Flash. I'd make like little tiny Flash games, just like making shapes move around the screen and stuff. Just was awesome. But and then I got Torque Game Builder, which died like 6 months after I bought it. They stopped supporting it. So I was like, all right, I got to find something else. And I was like on the cusp of either going to Unity or Game Maker, but I ended up going with Game Maker and I haven't looked back since.
Yeah, I mean, we're just entering this, and so a lot of people are like, wow, you made that in Game Maker, and it's like, I mean, why not? I mean, it's like not really like it's like the most complex thing to make a 2D side scroller as far as like. I mean, not that it's not complex. I mean, like obviously we can add complexity to it, but it's not like the engine is like it's beyond the engine's capabilities.
I think the drag and drop like turns a lot of people off that are like actual programmers because like they don't see that you can actually go into like there's like a lot you can do in terms.
And it kind of helps you consolidate things all in one spot because a lot of people still using Unity might be using external sprite editors and external programs anyway.
Yeah, well, and Unity is built in like C#, I think it is, and like Game Maker is like. GML, like Game Maker markup language, so it's like that's like turns a lot of people off.
Right. No, and that I can totally understand that. But for us, we're just kind of like, we're gonna make a cool game that's quality and it's gonna be fun. And it was made in Game Maker. That's it. Right? There's some other good ones that were made in Game Maker,
Yeah.
But what got me into it? I would say like we're both creative. You're a musician, right? I'm an artist. we're both
Yeah.
creative type people who also really love games. So it kind of seems like a no-brainer where there's always this like thing where, oh man, I wish I could do that, wish I could make that. But then you kind of just scare yourself away all the time because you're like, that making video games is so intimidating and complex.
Yeah.
And but we've just kind of been doing it. So
Yeah, I almost went to school for it. I got accepted into a school in Arizona, and I almost moved to Arizona, and it would have been like completely different. But
dude, I almost went.
I didn't.
I almost went to school for directing.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
But instead of illustration animation and but I think that's because I never even I've always loved games the most, and I just never thought I'm like, oh man, that's just for some like programming dudes.
Yeah,
that's some crazy.
I would have went if I wasn't like a stupid teenager at the end. I was like, I don't want to do that. Like,
yeah, it just seemed like a lot of work, and like I can draw.
I just want to get laid.
Yeah, I can draw. That's what I can do. I'll do that, and not learn these other things, But yeah, I mean, basically, I was poking around in Game Maker because it was so introductory and easy, and I've been doing that since in high school, I guess. And then you contacted me since college. We had not talked to each other for a while, and then out of nowhere, he contacts me. He's like, "Hey, man, you want to do this?" And did we decide on Game Maker because of I was using it, or were you already using it?
We were both using it.
We just both happened to be using it.
Yeah, like I sent you like what I was working on at the time was that cat game. Do you remember the cat game? Took it. To get the animations, I took a video of my cat, and then I drew sprites over it to get the movement of the cat walking. And you were like, dude, I really like the lasers in the background. Like that was one thing that when you looked at it, you're like, that stood out to me. Like I had weird lasers flying around in the background.
I can't believe that's a blur to me now. I just don't remember.
Yeah, I gotta try.
I remember you had that shooter game that you made, that space shooter type.
Oh
thing.
That was me and another one of my buddies that we tried to get into making games, and then it was it ended up being him being I got a bunch of good ideas. Yeah. I'm okay, how are you gonna back those ideas up? What are you gonna do? He's like, well, I got a bunch of good ideas. I'm like, well, yeah, but is it going to be you doing the ideas and I do the work? That kind of sucks. So it ended up just not working out. But you've been great because everything that you're the artist. So everything that you gave me, and actually someone contacted me the other. Now I'm just breaking off on a tangent, but Cammy got into talking with her hairdresser the other day. And her hairdresser was like, my boyfriend does game design. He's going to school for it. Can he reach out to your husband? He was like, yeah, and then he ended up emailing me the other day, and he was like, yeah, can you give me any tips? And as someone that's creating a game and putting it into the public eye and I don't know where I'm going with this, but I told him.
What was your wisdom?
Yeah, I just still keep on going. Stay in school, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah. So much have a goal, have a deadline, so you're forced to do something, and make sure that there's other people involved with you. So that you feel kind of you owe it to the people involved. You can't just give up on yourself. It's easy to give up on yourself. It's not as easy to give up on other people, especially if those people you have built enough of a relationship with, so that you're I can't let you down on this. So
before I forget, because now I forgot why I started telling that story.
Right, yeah.
No, because I broke off on a tangent in that email that I was sending back, and I was like, dude, if you're working with someone, make sure they're down to get into the nitty gritty, technical aspects of it. Josh has been great about everything he gives me is exact. I don't have to dick around with it. All his sprites, I don't have to be fuck, this is set up all retarded, all wrong, fucking.
But
I don't know. Everything
I'll
is
even have logic. I'll be I don't know exactly how you're going to program this or what all the things you have to consider, but these are the properties and the kind of logic of how this.
Yeah, you can tell everything is thought out before you give stuff to me. It's not you're just here's my art, man. Just put it in your game, man. It's just you can tell that you thought about how it's going to work in the end. So I said that was a very valuable thing if you're working with someone.
Yeah, I think having a clear vision of what you want, right? And we're kind of we're kind of figuring out as we go a little bit, because we're kind of drawing from our own intuitions about what feels right. And we'll know it when we make it, and we create that iteration, and then we'll be like, yeah, that's right. This is what felt right. We had an idea, and we had a clear enough vision to get here, so we could set a goal. So what got us into making games? For me, my girlfriend's like, hey, join Boston Fig, like we said. So. That's what do it. We always wanted to make games, I guess. And if you love video games and you're a creative person, you like making stuff, you probably thought of, I wish I could make video games. And then it's just how serious are you going to take that desire so that you put yourself in a position where you just don't even want to give up, something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that sometimes that means creating small goals for yourself. And this kind of goes into the video game, cycle, or that behavior loop where it's like, yeah, you have a challenge. And if the difficulty curve's too great at the first challenge, you're going to fail. You're never going to play that game again. So the making of the game is like a game in itself, in the sense that it's like you have to create all these small goals. Like, don't make your goal, I'm going to make this big, awesome, crazy game. But like, make your goal like, what's the next step in making this thing? So like, get this character in, get the collisions, get the sprites going, get these basic functions, and then at each one of these goal marks, you can kind of. So it's really having a plan really helps you kind of meet your goals, right? And people always say this kind of stuff, and I'm so disorganized. I'm terrible at like ever listening to these guys, but that's what
I feel like it's ebbs and flows with that kind of stuff. Like that's just how I kind of work. Like I go through like bouts of like experimentation, and then like it's like once you can experiment for a while and you get your footing, and you're like, all right, now I know what I need to do, and then you can bust stuff out.
Yeah, then you can kind of narrow stuff down, bust out. Yeah, once you exactly. Like we definitely have like these periods where we have to like be like really thinking things out and kind of designing and being creative and throwing out things that maybe contradict or create problems, and then when it comes to the actual like ironing out, sometimes you can just kind of pump things out.
I mean that's what this past couple of months have been. Like the past like 5 or so years, like working with you has just been like kind of like a bunch of random kind of ideas and trying stuff kind of half works, or some things work, some things don't. But then like I don't know, the past few months it's just been just like, okay, like we have clear,
increasingly
goals.
Focused. And even more so, we're working towards to increase that.
Totally.
So.
Yes.
So that's our deal.
Okay, and with that, we have come to the conclusion of this particular episode of the Pumpkin Copter Cast. I would like to thank Ken and Josh for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We appreciate it.
So, there will be a link to the Dirty Beast Games website so you can check out Feral Frontier for yourself and see all of what is available of it right now. If any of the -7 people listening to this enjoyed it, be sure to like.
Hey, they're positive to me.
Be sure to like and subscribe and all that good stuff. If you want, you can follow me on the Twitters at tgorman83, or you can follow Dirty Beast Games at Dirty Beast Games on the Twitters. And this has been the Pumpkin Copter Cast, a good old podcast about video games, and we hope to see you again.